Across eastern coasts of northern England and parts of Scotland, and once again we could see some fairly heavy showers breaking out across parts of Wales and southwestern England. But in any sunshine, it will feel quite warm over the weekend, particularly as we head towards Sunday, when I think it will be a bit of a drier day and we could see temperatures climbing into the low 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Do you condemn Netanyahu? Yes or no?
See, I am not going to have these guys.
I'm just a simple question. Do you condemn Netanyahu?
The man who shot that video has been charged with terror offences, but
the people who put you at risk are the people who chased down the street after some of my colleagues, who put pictures of me and genocidal liar or whatever it was.
Why do some people on the left still want to appease the mob? Also,
I don't agree with the government saying I can't teach critical race theory, but that's also because I know that I would do a better job of teaching critical race theory than other people.
Are schools trying to indoctrinate kids with critical race theory? And
just to be very clear, will Labour oppose new drilling licences in the North Sea?
Well, we do oppose them, and let me explain why.
Ed Miliband has gone feral. Is he about to cost the taxpayer tens of billions of pounds? Plus, prisoners on early release will be back out and about soon. Will Labour make Britain less safe? And this lot of illegal immigrants are on the way. Yeah, there we go. Footage emerges of migrants getting violent as they try to cross the border into Europe. There'll be more of that on the way very, very shortly, using weapons as they go. Plus,
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty the King Charles.
is there trouble at the heart of reform? There's been a big internal fallout. I'll reveal all. Also,
look at her voting record. She is just a party stooge. She voted for all Theresa May's deals. She voted for more net zero.
well, Sir Graham Brady, the former power broker to the Tory party, will be live in the studio to discuss the next Conservative leader. On my panel tonight is Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larzer. OK, and I want you to tell me why we all hate this orangutan, OK? I want you to tell me that. Why do we all hate that orangutan? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Has Ed Miliband already gone completely feral? Next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 9 o'clock, and the top story from the newsroom tonight is that police are still waiting to speak to Carl Clifford in connection with the murders of 3 members of the same family. He is currently in a serious condition in hospital. The 26-year-old was found near a cemetery in North London yesterday after a major manhunt. And earlier in Enfield, police were seen retrieving what appeared to have been 2 hard drives and bags of documents from a house connected to their ongoing search. It's understood a crossbow has also been recovered as part of that investigation. Carl Clifford is wanted for the deaths of Carol Hunt, the wife of BBC commentator John Hunt, and 2 of their daughters. In Bristol, a taxi has been seized as part of another urgent manhunt after 2 suitcases containing human remains were found on the city's Clifton Suspension Bridge. Officers have now released a description of their main suspect, who travelled there by taxi last night and left the luggage. If you're watching on television, you can see their images of that suspect. He has a beard, he's dressed in black and was wearing a backpack at the time he was caught on CCTV. Officers were called last night to reports of that man acting suspiciously on the bridge, say they're now urgently working to find him. The bridge remains closed while specialist investigators scour the scene, and an investigation is also understood to be underway to identify the remains. Double child killer Colin Pitchfork's next parole hearing will no longer be held in public after new allegations have come to light. He was jailed for life for the rape and murder of 2 15-year-old girls in Leicester in the 80s. The hearing was due to take place this week, but has been adjourned, with the parole board saying there have been fresh, relatively recent allegations relating to the risk that he poses. The Prime Minister has brushed off concerns that his plans to release prisoners early to ease overcrowded jails could see a crime wave unleashed across the country. His new government's proposing to free inmates after serving just 40% of their sentence. It's expected Sir Keir Starmer will authorise that emergency measure this week, but it comes after he said he was shocked at the levels of overcrowding in prisons, admitting it is worse than he first thought. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is set to hold a rare news conference later tonight as the US president attempts to calm doubts about his age and his ability to win the race to the White House. Political commentators say tonight's event is the kind of speech he needs to pull off if he's to hold on to support after a separate shaky debate performance against his rival Donald Trump. It comes after yesterday he lost the backing of another Hollywood actor, George Clooney. But after meeting Joe Biden at the NATO summit, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer thinks the president's on top form.
He was on good form, and we covered 4 more years, no problem. Well, look, he was on very good form, and I was very pleased to have that opportunity to discuss these issues with him, and not least this question of our special relationship, which is very important to him, very important to me, and very important to our 2 countries.
And finally, water companies in England and Wales say that planned bill rises won't be enough to tackle sewage spills. The regulator Ofwat has approved annual increases of £19 on average per household, but that's a third less than water firms had requested. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you for another update at 10 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. It looks as though Ed Miliband was on the brink of costing the British taxpayer tens of billions of pounds just a week after taking his position in the cabinet. Mr Miliband is already the most expensive policymaker in British history. In 2008, he pushed through the final version of the Climate Change Act. It made us the only country in the world legally committed to cutting our emissions of CO2 by 80% between then and 2050. Even then, the government projected that this would cost us up to £734 billion. The latest figures suggest that for Britain to reach this target, it would now cost even more, around £1,300 billion. Mr Miliband is, of course, reluctant to put his own money where his considerable mouth is. Here he is being asked about electric cars.
You've got one.
I haven't yet. It's a work in progress.
Practice what you preach.
It's a work in progress. We're actually on our way to buying one before lockdown. It is going to happen, I promise you. I have bought an electric bike, but it's on its way.
Then today, this article emerged. Miliband overrules officials with immediate ban on new North Sea oil. It says that the Energy Secretary has decided that regulators will not approve a new round of drilling that was slated for confirmation in the coming weeks. Now, this is backed up by a comment from Ed Miliband's team, which said, "We will not issue new licences to explore new fields and will not revoke existing oil and gas licences. We will manage existing fields for the entirety of their lifespan." OK, well, then it seems to have dawned on people that the energy, oil and gas companies might be a bit angry about this and they might take legal action. They've already spent hundreds of millions of pounds on this, and if the government lost that legal action, who would have to pay? Oh, yes, the British taxpayer. Not that Miliband would care about that, of course. Then the unions got involved. Sharon Graham, Unite General Secretary, said it is quite frankly irresponsible for Labour to keep ploughing ahead with the guillotine ban of new oil and gas licences when there is no clear plan for jobs. We simply cannot let go of one rope before we have a hold of another. Until we have clear plans and, more importantly, investment, we should not be turning off the taps. So then came the reverse ferret. All of a sudden, this story was nonsense and a complete fabrication and totally untrue. Ed Miliband's track record suggests that he doesn't care much about spending huge quantities of taxpayers' money, though, does it? He said that he'd relish fighting a general election campaign on net zero. And today, it emerged that the government will no longer defend a decision made by the Tories to allow a controversial new coal mine in Cumbria. So the new Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Angela Rayner, described it as an error of law. But where are we going to get our power? Well, Mr Miliband's sums for Great British Energy don't add up. It relies on Ed Miliband only investing public money into projects that go on to work, so, you know, and then encouraging private investors to invest more themselves. So the public have a right to wonder, I think, whether or not there is an eco-zealot at the heart of government holding a pen over a cheque that you're all paying for. Let's get our thoughts from my panel tonight. I'm joined by Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. I've also got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Alison, I'll start with you on this. Is Ed Miliband actually just an eco-loon?
Net zero nutter. I cannot tell you how absolutely flabbergasted and angry I am. Rishi hid him in a cupboard during the election. Well, we can see why. It's juvenile posturing, Patrick, with British jobs. Tens of thousands of British jobs, many of them in the north of Scotland, are dependent on North Sea oil and gas. We're going to be dependent on fossil fuels until at least 2050, as our own climate change committee has agreed. And let me just give you one example. We give Norway every single year £14.5 billion to pay Norway for gas, which they get from the North Sea in the field next to our field.
That's
Couldn't
great,
we get our own gas out of the North Sea and spend the £14.5 billion on something that might be nice, like Sure Start programmes for children or housing for our own young people. But Ed Miliband is wedded to decarbonising the grid by 2030. It's not going to happen, and he could really cause Labour some serious trouble.
Yeah, indeed. And you're right that they kind of did keep him quite hidden away during his election campaign. But now he's unchained, isn't he? Ed Miliband is off the leash, and straight away it's like, oh, no, we're not going to do any more of this stuff, we're not doing it. And then the reverse ferret comes, and this story is complete and utter total fabricated nonsense, of course. I just wonder with Ed Miliband how long we can stop him from doing stuff that is completely bonkers that affects us all.
More importantly, how long could Keir Starmer keep him? If he keeps doing this, he'll become a problem. And let's be very clear, Ed Miliband is so wedded to this now, he's lost the idea that he needs to be practical, he needs to be pragmatic. He'd rather be right in his own mind than pragmatic for the British public. And if we all, there's one thing we all agree on, a cost of living crisis. If you do something like this, that crisis will become an absolute emergency. They'll have to rein him in. And what he will find is, running government is very, very complicated. You are not the sole power in the country. You have a legal system that allow companies to come after you for the bottom line, and they will have to because they have employees' jobs that they have to protect.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Ed Miliband on this has got a track record of absolute disaster when it comes to spending the public's money, doesn't he? And now here he is in a position of power, and we've got the altar of green wokery for him to just sacrifice himself and indeed all of us on from now until the end of time. I mean, is he actually fit to be in office?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely he is, and I'm glad we've got an energy secretary who's committed to net zero with a party behind him and a prime minister behind him we need to deliver it, but it needs to be delivered in a sensible way, which is why I think, look, they've got their wires crossed today about whether... I mean, it's quite a complicated story because Labour is absolutely committed to North Sea oil and gas production. It is going to continue for those existing fields. There is a question about the new licences, and Labour's committed and just won an election on not issuing new licences. Some of those licences, I think what there's confusion today is between the fact that they're not going to basically advertise for any more versus revoking the ones that were just about issued at the death of the Tory government. And it seems that the ones that were issued on the Tory government are going to be honoured.
This matters because Great British Energy, right? Great British Energy. There isn't a plan for Great British Energy. Right, so they're saying that we're going to invest 8.
Well, there is a plan for Great British Energy.
They're saying that we're going to invest something like 8.6, I think, billion pounds. It is, but we're not being clear on whether or not that's buying existing green energy stock, which would not add at all.
My understanding is for new green energy investment.
Here's the thing. Matthew said it's a complicated area. The one person it shouldn't be complicated to is the Minister for, because if so, we are doomed. And again, this is so fundamental, not only to our cost of living, but to our national security. If we are held to ransom by bad players like we were Russia, we are doomed. They've got to have a very clear plan for two reasons. One, all the social and security reasons, but two, so that we can develop it properly. This will cost our country a great deal of money. If we don't do it correctly, we are stuck.
But it's not.
Well, I agree with you, Sean, and we're going to do it correctly.
It's not emerging. Why is Ed Miliband not piping up about the amount of private jets Keir Starmer and co have already taken?
We're not going to do it properly, Matthew, because it can't be done in the time frame they're claiming it's going to.
I think you're right about the decarbonising of the grid, but there are issues about.
Claiming it's going to be 2030. All these electric vehicles. We actually just saw him saying he hasn't got an electric vehicle.
If you look on the government website right now under what his priorities are, OK, one of his priorities, Matthew, is to encourage the world to act by leading by example.
Nobody cares.
Which means we all have to suffer in the vain hope that Xi Jinping one day decides we're on a path to moral fortitude.
I've got to say this. I've got one of the things that was most of all. I'm sorry, Matthew, but I'm so annoyed. But as I hear it, I hear it a lot in Parliament about our international reputation. I want to make it quite clear: no nation in the world cares what we're doing about net zero. They have their own plans, and they will only do their own plans. They will not follow us.
That's not true, because we're signed up to global agreements, Sean.
Hold on a second. They cannot follow us because we don't have a plan.
We do have a plan.
No, we don't.
And you're talking about the Chinese. The Chinese are the world's leaders in electric vehicle production. So I want. Let me finish, please, Sean.
They're also the world leaders in throwing up coal-fired.
Look, I want Britain to be at the forefront of green technologies because the Biden government has invested tens of billions of dollars in the Green New Deal there. I don't want Britain falling behind. I do think there is a sensible way of doing this. I think there's a way that, as Sharon Graham from Unite says, that protects British jobs and helps British workers transition. I do think that the particular demand to get the grid done is actually going to be an issue because there's an issue physically about building it.
Yeah, because that's really important. You're right. There is an issue physically in building it, which actually, if you translate that, means it can't. We haven't got the infrastructure.
Well, apparently there aren't enough wires in the world, according to the GMB.
In the world, currently,
according to the unions.
For the thing Ed Miliband wants to do, right?
Basically, look out of your kitchen window because in 3 months' time there's going to be a pylon there. OK, our country is going to be covered in pylons.
That's why the Greens won in Suffolk. Only on pylons.
I'm against pylons. I'm going to go and tie myself to a pylon.
No plan. There's no plan. There's lots of warm
Don't get frazzled.
There's lots of warm words, but there is no plan. And this is so... And you know what's wrong with this? It's all top-down. We can send 28 billion on this. Look at it...
It's only 8 now, Sean. We dropped the 28 billion.
But can an ordinary person afford this electric car? Can they afford to rise in the...
Can I just say, remember during the general election, Ed was absolutely clear that if you voted Labour, Labour was not going to force you to rip out your boiler by gas-fired boiler by 2030, unlike the Tories.
They might strongly incentivise you to do it, but which is
with your own money.
Well, the Tories were going to force you to do it.
With your own money.
Yeah. All right. I wonder if this is where the Labour tax issue actually unravels first, which is if these major companies all just do one from the North Sea and elsewhere, and you haven't got those windfall tax and you haven't got all of that, and then you haven't got the infrastructure in place to do the alternative green things, that could be a zone.
Particularly as committed to increasing the profit tax, the tax on the profit is due to pay for other things. Sorry, Alice.
Exactly.
That's happening already because these big gas and oil companies, if they think they're going to be behind the windmills and the renewables, they do not want to invest when they know they're going to be 8th in the pecking order. And that's happening already, Patrick.
Look, we'll have to watch this space when it comes to Ed Miliband, but
my old boss.
He's got the kind of wild-eyed look of a man who's just been unleashed. You know, here we go, I can do all the eco stuff. Anyway, still to come, a secret recording uncovers the woke guff being fed to British school kids.
I don't agree with the government saying I can't teach critical race theory, but that's also because I know that I will do a better job at teaching critical race theory than other people.
I'm going to be joined by a guest who tells me just how concerned we should be about things like critical race theory being taught to young kids. Plus, you might remember Paul the Octopus. But who has Walter the Orangutan picked to win Sunday's Euros final? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But up next, as Keir Starmer prepares to release tens of thousands of inmates early in a bid to prevent jails becoming full, will crime go up under Labour? Retired police officer Norman Brennan goes head-to-head with former prisoner and charity founder Mark Johnson. That should be good. See you in a sec.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Doogie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations from the beautiful city of Belfast.
And right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, an astonishing real-life recording that exposes the woke ideology being taught to kids in our schools. But first, will crime go up under Labour? It's time now for the head-to-head. So the Labour government is to announce plans to release prisoners in the coming days to ease overcrowding in cells. Speaking to reporters on a trip to the NATO summit in the US, Sir Keir Starmer said, "Some of what we've found is shocking. Not so much about the finances, but I have to say on prisons, the situation is worse than I thought it was. I'm pretty shocked that it's been allowed to get into that situation. It's reckless to allow them to get into that place." However, one figure from the previous administration hit back saying, "We held our nerve on this for months and found other ways to keep the system operational and get new prison places online." Labour have bottled it. So, with as many as 40,000 criminals to be released early onto our streets, will crime go up under Labour? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/your say. You can tweet me at GBNews. Go and vote in our poll while you're there. But I'm joined now by retired police officer Norman Brennan and former prisoner, now charity founder and best-selling author, Mark Johnston. Chaps, thank you very much. Looking forward to this. Look, Norman, I'll start with you. I'll be honest with you, I am finding it hard to believe that by releasing as many as 40,000 criminals back out onto the street early, that crime won't go up under Labour. But what's your thoughts?
It absolutely will go up under Labour. Policing is in crisis. We haven't got enough police officers. More are resigning than actually joining. All the experienced officers are gone. We've got knife crime epidemic levels. We've got shoplifting epidemic levels, as well as car theft. Two of those are costing us £2 billion each a year. We've got so many criminals out on the streets that should have been sent to prison, but because of the overcrowding already are there. There's two types that go to prison, Patrick. One is where the crime is so serious, and the other is where the crimes are so persistent. Of course, if you commit a very serious crime, like a rape, a robbery, gun crime, you have to go to prison. If you've exhausted all of the alternatives to imprisonment, then the magistrates and judges have a right and a duty and no alternative but send you to prison. So if we've got the right people in prison, Patrick, how can we have too many people in prison? We clearly haven't got the prison places or the foresight of this problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's possibly another area that has not kept up with the population explosion that this country has seen in the last 20, 30 years or so. Mark, I'll whiz it over to you now, because from my perspective, just, guy just goes around his business every single day. I see things happening in my local shops, like people just walking in and nicking stuff, right? And they don't seem to care about any of the consequences. Obviously, we're all well aware of things like knife crime, etc. And I just wonder, by having people released earlier than anticipated, what kind of message it sends to those people? If we already have people who don't fear the consequences, what's going to happen now?
Well, I mean,
strangely, it suggests that before, when the prison numbers were kind of under control, that that we had some kind of rehabilitation techniques in prison and programs in prison that actually worked. And quite frankly, that's never been the case. The reason that you know, people go to prison and have, you know, for a number of years being severely neglected, actually. The prison system itself, I mean, it's sort of a consequence from over politicising the justice system for the last 15 years, for sure. Where, you know, they've said that the rhetoric is tough on crime, longer sentence stuff. There's no evidence to say that longer sentences reduce reoffending at all. You've got America to look at, 1.5 million in prison, 1 in 9 people in the American population in prison, yet they've got higher reconviction figures than we have. I think what you're looking at is, like, 5 years ago, the Conservative government increased the summary conviction from the magistrates' courts up to 2 years. And that's a group of people that aren't really trained, that aren't representative of the community, and actually that's increased the prison numbers. The other one is, I'll say, is 15,000 people in British prisons now are there for recall, so they're not actually committed crimes. They've, like, not turned up.
With respect to that, though, isn't it that they committed crimes, they were released, and then they broke their bail conditions, and now they're back again? So I mean, some would argue that maybe indicates that they shouldn't have been released in the first place. You know, I will come back to you. Okay, fine. I will come back to you, mate. But look, I just want to say, so knife and gun crimes, robbery and theft are currently rising in Britain. There is a shoplifting epidemic at the moment. It is apparently its worst for 20 years. Figures show almost 1,200 cases of shop thefts are being reported every day. That is up by 1/3 in a year. There is also a little bit of this going on as well.
People.
Yeah, Norman, you know, what do we do about this? Is there a case to say that there's much point in locking somebody up for 10 years with no rehabilitation, making them serve their entire sentence, and then they are unemployable afterwards? I mean, this new prisons guy, Timpson, has put his money where his mouth is, the way he runs his shops and things like that. He does employ a lot of people who are leaving prison, and, you know, is there much point in keeping people locked up for longer, in your view?
Well, the alternative is we just release everybody and we have anarchy on our streets. The thing is, where somebody has committed such a serious crime or persistent crime, when they're in prison, they're not plaguing victims, they're not plaguing society. And let's actually look at what prison's all about. It's to punish, to deter, to reassure and to rehabilitate. Now, I can tell you now, Patrick, there are tens of thousands of people on the streets of Britain that should actually be in prison but weren't sent there. So we've got them on the streets. We're now having probably tens of thousands of others released after only 40% of the time. What message does that send? I'll tell you what message it sent. Weak sentencing on offenders is tough sentencing on the victims and society. And the thing is if there's no rehabilitation or correct rehabilitation, that should be worked at. The last government, they closed 17 prisons, failed to build 5. And Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper cannot say they didn't know the problem. They were shadowing this government for 15 years.
I think there is, and it is, by the way, not just to do with prisons. We are going to see this for pretty much every single department for probably the next few years, where it's, and there might be some truth in this, by the way, but the Labour Party are going to say, oh, gosh, we've just had a look at this. It's even worse than we thought, so we're going to have to do more. So I think there is a bit of that going around. You're absolutely right to point that out. I'll just bring you back in, Mark, on this now. I heard what you said about America. Fine, I understand that. I would possibly counter that by suggesting that some countries that do have really harsh laws, and I'm not for a single second advocating the kind of judicial system they have in Saudi Arabia, for example, but I imagine the crime rate in Saudi Arabia is quite low. So I wonder if that kind of nullifies the old softer, gently approach, Mark.
Well, no, I mean, you know, there's two sides to this. I mean, the disinvestment into prison and rehabilitation, I've got to tell you, I've just spent 16 days in 6 British prisons, right? And it's the default mental health institution, fact, right? So 70% of all people in there, we're prescribing our way out of one problem and prescribing our way into another, and the whole drug trajectory is changing. from heroin, illegal street drugs, now into second and third sentences on prescriptions that they actually got on entry into prison in the first place. So when, if you're committing a crime and it's a drug related or whatever, and you're going into prison, the first person you meet is a doctor and you're getting a prescription, you're not getting any kind of programs because of the understaffing. Probation, when you get out, is literally over capacity by 130% in London, for instance. So it's neglect from the state. You know what I mean?
So why are we releasing them? Why are we releasing them if they can't be put under probation? I can tell you Patrick.
Well, simply because the political decision made, because justice has been politicised, they've put the rhetoric out to the public about being tough on crime, but we haven't had the capacity to house that group of people.
You're an ex-offender. You're an ex-offender. For 45 years, I've been a police officer and a leading campaigner on law and order. I have picked up the devastation that you leave behind. Now, the thing is, I've got no problems with people being given an alternative to imprisonment. But when you breach them, and all these people that tell me that you go to prison to learn new tricks, I can tell you thousands of prisoners that I've actually interviewed, arrested and charged, that there's very few new tricks to learn. They see prison as a short respite to go out and offend. And if we're going to go and release tens of thousands on top of all the others that should have been in prison but are not, I can tell you, Patrick, there's a perfect storm coming, and you will get me back in a year or two if I'm still about, and we'll be talking about the tsunami.
The sad reality from a prisoner perspective, right, is that we've got a situation that even though there is literally nothing in prison to rehabilitate people, it is better than actually their lives out in the community. And that's the perception of large numbers of people in British prisons at the moment. That's the reality. There's only one option that they've got, and I think now is the time to do it, and that's reduce the prison numbers to be able to build back an effective justice system.
Victims have already been a victim once. Victims have already been a victim once. The public have been protected from them, and now we're releasing out the people.
All right, guys. All right, we're out of time. We're out of time, but thank you very much. Again, I'll say this. We wanted a head-to-head, and we did get one, so both of you, thank you. All right, look, who do you agree with? Do you think that crime's going to go up under Labour? Look, just quickly on this, it's only going to take one serious incident, I think, for this whole policy to completely blow up, all right? Only going to take one of the early release lot to go on some kind of mad spree. The whole thing will blow up, and we're seeing already the Labour Party blaming this on the Tories, aren't they? Things were so bad, the only choice we've got is to let this lot out. So if they were that confident that this is going to work, would they be saying all of that? But anyway, Bob on X says, obviously, time to arm yourself for your own safety. Well, Bob, I'd probably row back from that one slightly, I'll be honest with you. But Leah says, this government needs to be sued for every crime committed by released prisoners. All right. Well, Rick says, it's gone up under the Conservatives because so many people cannot afford to eat or heat their homes until the poor in this country are paid better money. Crime will always go up. OK, all right, now your verdict is in. 95% of you expect crime will go up under Labour. 6% of you say it won't. Coming up, Ben Habib has been sacked as Deputy Leader of Reform UK, and he's come out swinging at the party's top brass. I'll get the lowdown from Reform spokesperson Anne Widdecombe shortly. But first, British schools, well, I mean, they weren't woke a long time ago. But anyway, if you don't believe me, just listen to this secret recording.
I don't agree with the government saying I can't teach critical race theory, but that's also because I know that I would do a better job of teaching critical race theory than other people.
Yeah, there's a lot more where that came from. Next, I'll ask the COO of Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma, if the government should ban critical race theory in the classroom and whether or not kids are being indoctrinated. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It looks like it'll be a pretty cloudy day for most of us on Friday. There's a risk of some very heavy showers across the southwest as well. Now, for most of us, high pressure is building in just for a time for the end of the week and into the start of the weekend. That means it will turn that much drier through the next few days, but there's still a risk of some showers. And through this evening, I think central areas are most likely to see the cloudiest skies and a risk of some rain through this evening. Also, some areas of rain might move into the far southeast from the near continent. Where skies remain clear, though, to the north, across parts of Scotland, it could be a bit of a fresh start down into the lower single figures by tomorrow morning. But for most of us, a fairly mild start. But as I said, sunshine is going to be a little bit limited through Friday. A northerly wind drags cloud in, perhaps some more heavy rain to the far northwest of Scotland throughout Friday morning. Some sunny spells, though, coming through for Northern Ireland, southwestern areas of Scotland. Also some areas of northeastern England as well. But here we've got a northerly wind, and that's going to keep the temperatures down through the day. And as I said, there is a risk of showers across the south coast throughout the day, particularly as we head into the afternoon into the southwest. We could see some thundery, heavy downpours. But for most of us elsewhere, it should stay dry through Friday. Quite a lot of cloud around, though, so with that lack of sunshine, it's not going to be a particularly warm feeling day. And we could see some heavier rain move into the east coast of northern England later on in the day. So for most of us, temperatures in the high teens at best, possibly scraping 20 or 21 degrees in the far southeast. Saturday, there's little in the way of change. We've still got this rain lingering across eastern coasts of northern England and parts of Scotland, and once again we could see some fairly heavy showers breaking out across parts of Wales and southwestern England. But in any sunshine, it will feel quite warm over the weekend, particularly as we head towards Sunday, when I think it will be a bit of a drier day and we could see temperatures climbing into the low 20s.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight, and a recording has been unearthed of a teacher appearing to promote critical race theory with their students. Here's a listen of it.
I don't agree with the government saying I can't teach critical race theory, but that's also because I know that I would do a better job at teaching critical race theory than other people. So critical race theory would say you can't be racist to white culture. And so it's kind of like, you know, it's like when people say, oh, the theory of evolution, but it has the word theory in it, so it can't be proven. Well, actually, scientists would say we use the word theory even when we're like 95% sure. The way the government make it sound, it makes it sound like, you know, half the people believe something and half the people don't believe something, when actually it's probably closer to like 80% of sociologists versus 20%.
Well, the school involved there said that there's been no complaints and that the clip was taken out of context. But should we be worried about woke ideology like that infiltrating our schools? I'm joined now by the COO of the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma. Sunil, thank you very, very much. I mean, when you hear things like that being said in schools, you know, critical race theory would suggest that you can't be racist towards white people, etc., that teacher clearly feels he knows better than the government, putting critical race theory on a par with the theory of evolution. I mean, what do you think of that?
I think it's totally absurd, and it's really worrying that this ideology that's been mainly going on in America of critical race theory is now being imported to the UK. Critical race theory is simple. It's focusing on our differences, and it's rewarding victimization. And I think it's something that we really need to be very wary of and very careful that it doesn't continue to spiral into the UK, because this is something that I think it's only going to grow, and I don't know what this government stance will be when it comes to critical race theory, but I think we have to be very careful that we don't see almost an Americanization of our UK schools.
I'm not really sure what the benefit of teaching an incredibly contested, and some would argue actually quite irrelevant, race theory when it comes to this country's history. To a load of people, you would imagine in many schools, the majority of whom will actually be white as well. I just wonder what kind of psychological issue that could have on children.
Well, I think the bigger thing, Patrick, people should be focused on when it comes to school is white boys. They are the group of children who are suffering the most. They're the ones who are doing the least well in education. And all this will do is make that situation even worse. We're teaching them to feel guilty. We're teaching them to feel bad about things that happened almost a century ago, if not longer. And all it's going to continue to ruin their confidence. And so it makes no sense. We look at all other ethnic groups. You look at Indian culture, you look at British Jews, Chinese, all these races are doing better than British white boys. And considering the majority of our population when it comes to workforce is white and they are male, that's really concerning, because these boys are going to become one day men, and these men are going to take on jobs. And considering that they're going to be not doing as well on an educational scale, that is bad for all races in this country, because they're going to make up majority of the workforce, and their declining in standards is something that we should be talking about and not critical race theory.
Yeah, I mean, it does make me laugh, really, when people say, oh, I don't actually really think that you can be racist towards a white person and all of that stuff. I mean, I've had people be racist towards me. I mean, yeah, all right, it's not keeping me awake at night, but it has happened. I mean, it is a thing that can happen. Anyone can be racist to anybody else as well. It also makes me laugh when you hear about schools, oh, we've not got enough funding, you know. All right, OK, well, what about all of that month-long Pride stuff that you've somehow found the money for? What about all of this resources and the time that you've got to teach kids incredibly contested racial theory? You know, they seem to find the money and the time and the resources for woke stuff, just maybe not for maths and English.
It's bizarre. You know, these children should be going into school being learned to be the brightest and best pupils, and it's just not happening. It's happening in other countries, hence why their productivity is better than ours. I think we're more focused on things that are irrelevant. This is not going to help any of the children when they get a real job, whether we're talking about Pride or critical race theory. What is the purpose of teaching this if not just creating division? So I think it's really bizarre. It's really concerning, and the focus of these schools should be to try and make our children cleverer and push them further education-wise, and that will improve us when it comes to productivity and work. It seems really bizarre that we're focused on things that are just irrelevant. Again, it's something that's being contested in America, which is where we seem to have imported it from. It's completely irrelevant, I think, even there, let alone here. And it's bizarre that we're now sitting and discussing this.
Well, indeed. And look, I would like to thank you very much for your time this evening. I do hope to talk to you about this again soon. So I've got a feeling that we're going to be hearing quite a lot more about this stuff. And I just feel as though there's something brewing here. And hopefully we can do a bit more to highlight it on this show. COO of the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth there, Sunil Sharma, you take care. Thank you very much. Coming up, Jonathan Ashworth lost his seat to a pro-Gaza candidate. And it's fair to say he's not happy.
Do you condemn Netanyahu? Yes or no?
You see, I am not going to have these guys.
I'm just a simple question. Do you condemn Netanyahu?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot more of that coming your way. Were these campaigns a threat to democracy? Do not want to miss my mono at 10. But next, Ben Habib lashes out at the Reform UK top brass after he's sacked as deputy leader. So is the party actually a united front? What's going on? I want answers from Reform spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. She joins me next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. Now, as Tangam Debonair speaks out against intimidating Muslim candidates, does the pro-Gaza mob represent a threat to our democracy? Frankly, when will the left wake up to it? That's what I want to know. But first, we welcome Reform UK's Immigration and Justice spokesperson, Anne Widdecombe. Now, Reform UK has decided to have a hierarchical shake-up after they won 5 seats in Parliament, announcing Richard Tice as their new deputy leader, Zia Youssef as chairman, and Lee Anderson as the chief whip. So the new structure, however, does leave former deputy leader Ben Habib seemingly out in the cold, just a week after he failed to win his Wellingborough seat at the general election. He did hit back earlier today. He wrote, "I have just been informed by Nigel Farage that Richard Tice is taking over as deputy leader of the party. Consequently, I no longer hold that position. I am considering my position more generally in light of this change. I've long held concerns about the control of the party and the decision-making process. I will reflect on all of this." Well, Anne, thank you very much for joining us now. I mean, is Ben Habib right to suggest that there might be certain issues behind the scenes here at Reform? It doesn't seem like a particularly united front now.
I have been speaking to Ben Habib this afternoon, and as he says, he is quite literally reflecting on the situation that has arisen. Now, it was quite obvious. First of all, your chief whip's got to be in Parliament, so that had to go to Lee Anderson. Secondly, it's also quite obvious that once Nigel had come back as leader, Richard Tice was in limbo for some time. I mean, he had no formal position. So obviously, the obvious position for him is deputy leader, and that leaves the 2 previous deputy leaders being asked to do other things, on which, as far as I can make out, they're reflecting, which is fine.
I suppose one of the issues is that it does appear to have been quite a meteoric rise for Zia Youssef, who, you know, let's be honest, until a couple of months ago, or even maybe a few weeks ago, was not as well known as he is now. I just wonder if there are issues of loyalty there when it comes to Ben.
No, I really don't think they are. I mean, the party is profoundly grateful for all that Ben Habib has done, and I, for one, fervently hope that he keeps on doing it, because he is our spokesman for the union, and he has been terrific in the work that he's done in Northern Ireland, and I don't think that anybody else could have done it as well. So, no, I think, you know, this is a very straightforward business. There's been a reshuffle, and people have now got to think where they want to go from here.
OK, all right. Well, look, I'll whiz us on to another story. Keir Starmer has popped across to the United States this week, where his potential plans to rebuild Britain's relationship with the EU received high praise.
And there's a lot going on. I think you're seeking closer ties to Europe is good for all of us. The Transatlantic Alliance, I think it's a great idea that we're going to be working together on.
I mean, is that the best advert for Brexit ever? You know, someone like Joe Biden endorsing closer ties with Europe. Isn't it what day of the week is?
Well, yeah, come on, he doesn't know what day of the week it is, and, you know, he obviously had that scripted and managed most of it. But the fact is, he is anti-British, he is anti-Brexit. We know how he behaved in Ireland. You know, talked about not letting the Brits screw around, and I'm quoting him now, not being vulgar. Those were his words. So, I mean, I don't expect him to be friendly to an independent Britain. He'd much rather have us in Europe. Well, tough, Joe. That's a matter for the British people, not you.
Yeah, indeed. But it actually feeds me into my next point here, which is especially really in your brief, in your capacity, with a focus on migration when it comes to reform as well, because migrant madness has once again hit the Polish border. So spear-wielding illegal migrants have launched a deadly recent attack on EU border guards, OK? It's left several injured. One 21-year-old guard died. Right, the barrage of missiles came from the Belarusian side of the border. Now, this, for me, Anne, is a big problem with what the Labour Party are looking at doing at the moment. Well, they say, oh, we'll stop the boats and we'll look at some kind of returns agreement or whatever we can with the EU. Yeah, fine. But unless we can stop that lot coming in, we could end up with spear-wielding illegal migrants here, couldn't we?
But, I mean, the fact is that if we go down the route of agreeing any sort of free movement with the European Union, anything at all in return for closer cooperation, then, you know, we're going to be absolutely out of control, and we're already out of control, and Keir Starmer is doing nothing about it. Let's be clear about that. You know, by ditching Rwanda without putting anything in its place other than a lot of international talk, which is actually what he's saying. You know, I think it was quite right. I forget who said it today, but some Conservative said, you know, James Cleverly, I think he's actually hung, you know, a great welcome sign from the cliffs of Dover, and he has.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask, I don't know if it's possible, if we could just have another look at some of those spear throwers there, because I think it is really quite graphic stuff. And, you know, it does emphasise, really, what the problem is. So, you know, it's all very well and good for Keir Starmer to say, oh, you know, look, hey, we're going to scrap Rwanda and we're going to smash the gangs and we're going to do all of this. But that is something we're seeing on our screens there that he is not in control of. He's not in control of the Polish border, and he's not in control of what people other countries decide to let through. And there is nothing, if we were to sign up to some kind of EU illegal migrant quota system, there is nothing to say that one or many of those people wouldn't end up here as a result of it. They just wouldn't have taken a boat to get here. We'd have flown them in.
And, I mean, it's worth pointing out that if they're behaving that way, it's very difficult to see them as, you know, poor souls fleeing persecution. I mean, they are not. You know, that we have to be very clear about. And you're quite right. You know, if there's any give at all, either in terms of quotas or in terms of freedom of movement or anything of that sort, or in terms of what restrictions we put in place as far as migrants go, any laxity in that could indeed result in that sort of thing over here.
I mean, it is. I find the whole thing absolutely terrifying. Really, seriously, that, you know, we are okay. The Rwanda thing was a bit of a dud. It's been an expensive dud. We're not going to get any money back from Rwanda. Yeah.
Once we give us our money back, I mean, we've broken the agreement, not them.
Yeah, we've defrauded ourselves. I mean, we've basically defrauded ourselves. So we've had essentially all of the cost of Rwanda without ever really even giving it that much of a chance to work. I'm not convinced it would have worked anyway, but we are where we are. With no other plan in place, as far as I can tell at all. You've got spear-throwing illegal migrants breaking into Europe as we speak, potentially making their way across the continent to us. And what is to stop them? But just time for one more quick one with you, Anne, if that's all right, because among those people who voted Tory in 2019, but not in 2024, so people who went and voted Reform, really, Nigel Farage is by far the favourite candidate to be the next Tory leader on 25%. What are the chances of that, do you think, Anne?
I don't think they're very high. I'm sure we will look favourably on applications from Conservatives to join Reform, but I don't think we want to run that rabble at the moment.
Would you have Suella Braverman?
If she applies.
OK, all right. And Widdicombe, thank you very much. You take care. I'll see you soon. Coming up, I'm joined live in the studio by the former Tory MP and chair of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've got to get to the bottom, haven't we, of what on earth is going on with the Tory leadership race. But next, were the pro-Gaza campaigns a threat to our democracy? Don't miss my searing take on that. Finally, some people on the left are waking up to the mess they helped create.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It looks like it'll be a pretty cloudy day for most of us on Friday. There's a risk of some very heavy showers across the southwest as well. Now, for most of us, high pressure is building in just for a time for the end of the week and into the start of the weekend. That means it will turn that much drier through the next few days, but there's still a risk of some showers. And through this evening, I think central areas are most likely to see the cloudiest skies and a risk of some rain through this evening. Also, some areas of rain might move into the far southeast from the near continent. Where skies remain clear, though, to the north, across parts of Scotland, it could be a bit of a fresh start down into the lower single figures by tomorrow morning. But for most of us, a fairly mild start. But as I said, sunshine is going to be a little bit limited through Friday. A northerly wind drags cloud in, perhaps some more heavy rain to the far northwest of Scotland throughout Friday morning. Some sunny spells, though, coming through for Northern Ireland, southwestern areas of Scotland. Also, some areas of northeastern England as well, but here we've got a northerly wind and that's going to keep the temperatures down through the day. And as I said, there is a risk of showers across the south coast throughout the day, particularly as we head into the afternoon into the southwest. We could see some thundery, heavy downpours. But for most of us elsewhere, it should stay dry through Friday. Quite a lot of cloud around, though, so with that lack of sunshine, it's not going to be a particularly warm feeling day. And we could see some heavier rain move into the east coast of northern England later on in the day. So for most of us, temperatures in the high teens at best, possibly scraping 20 or 21 degrees in the far southeast. Saturday, there's little in the way of change. We've still got this rain lingering across eastern coasts of northern England and parts of Scotland, and once again we could see some fairly heavy showers breaking out across parts of Wales and southwestern England. But in any sunshine, it will feel quite warm over the weekend, particularly as we head towards Sunday, when I think it will be a bit of a drier day and we could see temperatures climbing into the low 20s.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
Do you condemn Netanyahu? Yes or no?
You see, I am not going to have these guys.
I'm just a simple question. Do you condemn Netanyahu?
The man who shot that video has been charged with terror offences and...
Don't think it's acceptable to start saying, don't vote for someone, they're not a Muslim.
Well, the Islamist extremists are targeting MPs, aren't they? But...
The people who put you at risk are the people who chased down the street after some of my colleagues, who put pictures of me and genocidal liar or whatever it was.
Believe it or not, some people on the left still want to just appease these extremists. Also, who's Starmer talking about here?
He was actually on really good form and
mentally agile,
absolutely across all the detail.
I'll reveal all, and this lot of illegal migrants are on their way to Britain after violently breaking into Europe. Also,
look at her voting record. She is just a party stooge. She voted for all Theresa May's deals. She voted for more net zero.
very pleased to say that Sir Graham Brady, the former power broker of the Tory party, is live in this studio to discuss the next Conservative leader. On my panel tonight is Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larzer. And I need you to tell me why we all hate this orangutan, OK? I need you to tell me why. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Labour are reaping what they sowed. Next.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 10 o'clock. I'm Sam Francis, and the top story tonight in Enfield. Police have retrieved 2 hard drives and what appeared to be bags of documents from a house connected to their ongoing triple murder investigation. 61-year-old Carol Hunt and her 2 daughters, 25-year-old Louise and Hannah, who's 28, were attacked at their home in Bushey. Hertfordshire police say their main suspect, Carl Clifford, is now in a serious condition in hospital. He's yet to speak with officers. Any more details will, of course, be brought to you throughout the rest of tonight and into tomorrow morning. A taxi has been seized as part of a manhunt after 2 suitcases containing human remains were left on Bristol's Clifton Suspension Bridge. Police say their immediate priority is to trace the main suspect and have now released a description of someone seen on CCTV last night. That man had travelled to the bridge via taxi and dropped off the luggage. There's been no detail so far, though, about any potential victims or a motive. The government is expected to announce plans tomorrow to alleviate the intense pressure on prisons. Sir Keir Starmer's proposing to free inmates after serving just 40% of their sentence. It comes after he said he was shocked at the levels of overcrowding in prisons, admitting it is worse than he first thought. In the US, 2 more congressmen, in fact, from Joe Biden's own party are now calling him to step aside in the race for re-election. Democrats Greg Stanton and Ed Case are the latest in the line of politicians and celebrity backers, including George Clooney, to distance themselves from the president. It follows growing concerns about his age and ability to beat Donald Trump in November's election. But after a meeting with Joe Biden at the NATO summit, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said he thinks the president's performing well.
He was on good form, and we covered
4 more years, no problem.
Well, look, he was on very good form, and I was very pleased to have that opportunity to discuss these issues with him, and not least this question of our special relationship, which is very important to him, very important to me, and very important to our 2 countries.
Staying in the US, and a lawyer for Alec Baldwin has been questioning a police technician over the investigation into the shooting on the film set of Rust, which killed a cinematographer. If you're watching on television, you can see here live pictures from inside the courthouse where those hearings are ongoing. The trial's taking place in Santa Fe in New Mexico. Baldwin's lawyer, Alex Spiro, suggested agents were more interested in prosecuting the Hollywood star than finding the source of a live round that led to the death of Halyna Hutchins in October 2021. You can see there Alec Baldwin in shot on your screen there as he watches lawyers deliberate with the judge. The actor is on trial charged with involuntary manslaughter, which he has strongly denied. Swimmers are being advised against using an Edinburgh beach due to a potential risk to human health from bacteria found in the water there. The Scottish Environment Protection Agency is warning people shouldn't swim or paddle at Portobello Beach. The council and Scottish Water are now investigating findings from routine water samples. And finally, some sad nature news. 77 pilot whales have died after a mass stranding on a beach on Orkney. Initially, 12 had survived, but were then euthanised because they couldn't refloat themselves during the incoming tide on the island of Sanday. The group, British Divers Marine Life Rescue, says the animals will be examined to try to discover why they stranded. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with you just before headliners at 11 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Will the left finally wake up and realise that there is a problem with Muslim political extremism in Britain? Jonathan Ashworth lost his seat and with it a potential cabinet position. He lost to an independent candidate who was supported by a man who is now facing terrorism charges. That man shot this video, unrelated to the charges against him, I must say, accosting Ashworth in the street.
Do you condemn Netanyahu? Yes or no?
You see, I am not going to have these guys.
I'm just a simple question. Do you condemn Netanyahu?
So Labour has been reluctant to call out the Islamic political issue in the past. Well, now it's hurting them.
I have never known a campaign of such vitriol, such bullying, such intimidation, built on the foul and obnoxious lie that I was responsible for genocide, that I had the blood of Gazan children on my hands. This is the campaign that was run by a minority of bullies. A campaign was organised nationally by a national organisation called The Muslim Vote, whose campaign was clear on their website: punish MPs.
Well, he's not alone. Here's Shabana Mahmood, now the Justice Minister.
I don't think it's acceptable to make threats to people. I don't think it's acceptable to send masked men outside a meeting of women with the hope of scaring them and forcing them out. I don't think it's acceptable to start saying, don't vote for someone, they're not a Muslim. I don't think it's acceptable to shout infidel to activists in the street. That is a whole other level of violent, vile politics.
Well, quite. And we all remember this from Labour frontbencher Jess Phillips, don't we?
Was an absolutely horrible campaign, the most aggressive, most intimidatory, not just of me, but of the people in my constituency, people being intimidated, people being told that God will judge them if they vote a certain way, which is an electoral offence. Yeah, it's been pretty awful. Some of my activists had their tyres slashed on election day.
Not really naming the problem, though, are they? And look, here's Tangam Debonair, who was going to be Digital Culture, Media and Sports Secretary before she lost her seat to the Greens. She's outlined a bit of her experience.
It's easy to craft a narrative that goes, your MP didn't vote for a ceasefire, if your own party hasn't said, we voted twice for a ceasefire and publicly. And seeing billboards vandalised saying you enabled genocide, no, I really haven't. The people who put you at risk are the people who chased down the street after some of my colleagues, who put pictures of me and genocidal liar or whatever it was. They threatened me. The people who stood outside Labour Party meetings and other events, they threatened democracy.
But her solution to this, and this is what I think many people find incredibly frustrating, is that she thinks that Labour needed to do more to just explain itself to these people.
If the party doesn't want to look to those issues of what did we actually say about Gaza? Keir was working as a future Prime Minister on getting back to the peace plan. I'm so proud of that, but where was that written? I was saying it on the doorstep.
And he didn't say it?
But we didn't hear it, so the party's got a problem there, I think.
But the party failed to deal with them properly.
I think the lack of a strong narrative had consequences.
I mean, come on, really? And as far as the establishment media goes, in the run-up to the election, Channel 4 went out and found a rather fruity guy canvassing for reform who said some horrific things. And then that led the news agenda 4 days. I've been calling out the problem that those Labour MPs have faced for months. Do you remember this from outside the office of Rushanara Ali MP months and months ago? Why are you here?
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Labour courted these people. They ignored all the warnings. Now they're complaining about it because they've turned against them. The solution cannot and must not ever be appeasement. Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson. We've also got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Alison, how do you feel when you see people unable or unwilling to name the actual problem here?
Well, we know that Jess Phillips is no shy retiring violet. She's a very powerful, articulate woman, and she was booed horribly at her account where she did survive. Unlike, there's a lot of Labour constituencies which are under threat now from the Muslim vote, and I think it's very disappointing. They were prepared to say horrible men were vilifying us or saying you've got blood on your hands, but there's still a hesitation, isn't there, Patrick, about naming what it is. And I think there's extreme fear of being found guilty of Islamophobia, and these people, it is a minority of very, very unpleasant people, and I think that they are prepared to exploit that weakness, and it is a weakness. We cannot have a minority, an aggressive religious minority in this country, trying to dictate British foreign policy. And once they've done that over Gaza, what happens next? Segregation of men and women. We've got areas where pubs aren't allowed. We cannot have this. It's sectarianism, and it's very worrying.
I've seen this stuff firsthand. I've been calling it out for months. I've been right in the middle of it for months, on several occasions, actually. And if people like Channel 4 or the BBC or whatever had really wanted to do a number on some people at this election, in the way that certain people decided to go after reform, I will emphasise what that guy said, actor or not, was absolutely appalling. I think everyone can agree with that. However, if they'd really wanted to do a number on people, all they would have had to do was follow some of these independent candidates around over the next couple of. They weren't interested.
Look, there's two problems here. Firstly are these people receiving the same treatment that everybody else is in politics? If a Tory MP uttered anything of this equivalency, they'd be hounded out, they'd be doing lawfare, they'd have the police around there, all the rest of it. So why do certain people who say certain things don't have to face the music? That's very important. And the other thing as well, it's normalising a super, super dangerous, aggressive form of campaigning. It starts online with people organising pile-ins. Now they're turning up outside people's homes, outside the constituency offices. This is a threat to democracy, and it makes being in public life physically dangerous.
Yeah, so go on, I'll ask you about this. Do you think it is a threat to democracy? And the kind of follow-up to that is when you see Tangam Debonair there saying that the Labour Party needed to do more to essentially appease these people, I would argue, why?
Well, I mean, I think she's right that perhaps there wasn't clear communication of the policy, but that doesn't mean that you should ever give in to bullies. I mean, look, Jonathan spoke out very, very clearly and passionately there. I've known Jonathan from when we were both teenagers and involved in Young Labour together. So long ago, it was still called the Young Socialists. And Jonathan's passionate commitment to the Labour Party and to social justice. The idea that Jonathan, got blood on his hands and people following him down the street. It's utterly intimidatory behaviour, and I'm really glad that he's come out strongly today and said that we need to look at this. And I think you're right, Sean. What we need now, I think we can all agree on this, is that those people who were elected to Parliament on a single issue without scrutiny. And I think you're right. The mainstream media took their eye off the ball because the story wasn't there. They need to be fake. They need to receive the same scrutiny that anybody else would.
My main issue with this, apart from it's a threat to democracy and there's an issue with public safety and stuff, but people have been calling this stuff out and saying this is a problem. And now it's hitting a few people, like Jonathan Ashworth, and all of a sudden he's got bold as brass. Now he's lost his seat. He's out there complaining about an organisation called the Muslim Vote. We've been talking about that on this show.
Well, we talked about...
But that's the issue. It's an issue. It's a blind spot to certain communities. I bet if it was a Christian vote, they would get confronted. If it was a Tory MP, they would get confronted. People who run the so-called mainstream media, this is their duty to look at this. But importantly, It's a shame that Debonair lost her seat because she's one of the good ones, right? But this now comes down to Keir Starmer. He's not the leader of the opposition anymore. He's the Prime Minister, and he has to call them out. He cannot court these people because of the risk they are to us all. He has to call them out, and it means more coming from him than anybody else.
And we've got, Alison, we've got testimony from people there saying that they're campaigners, they're canvassers, who are really just ordinary local people, aren't they? The vast majority of that. We're getting tyres let down, massive amounts of threats. People knew where they lived. Dogs abuse, absolute dogs abuse in the streets. That puts people off going out and campaigning, right? So that is a real core threat to democracy. It's mafia style, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. And there's also a strong element of misogyny. As you said, we've had one of these guys recording a foul tape where he talked about, you know, women will be going to hell and things like that. Something I've been concerned about for some time is the heavy postal vote in some of these constituencies. How many of those women are being given access to their own votes? And this is, again, Patrick, they steer clear of it. You know, it's a very, very... It's seen as being a toxic issue. I don't quite agree with what Matthew said, because you're almost saying that, you know, these people took their eye off the ball. A lot of the mass media, they deliberately don't want to talk about this. And with the Labour vote going...
I was being generous, but you could be right.
There are a lot of Labour constituencies now where, despite the huge apparent landslide, a lot of the majorities are very slender. Now, when you've got a lot of constituencies with only 2,000 or 3,000 majority, this opens the field for more of these guys to move in and I would use the word blackmail and holding...
Absolutely, and because one of the things that actually hasn't been talked about much is this was an issue, not in constituencies just where they came close to winning the Gaza campaigners, but in some constituencies, the Gaza campaigners who were going to come third or fourth, but they were significant enough that skewed the result. So that people only won by a couple of hundred, where otherwise they might have won by that.
All right, guys. Well, look, thank you very much. Another top start to the hour. Coming up, I'll deliver the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And after Ollie Watkins gave England reason to dream, should Keir Starmer grant the nation a bank holiday if we win the Euros? Plus, why do we now hate this orangutan? I'll tell you why we hate this orangutan. Anyway, next though, as 2019 Conservative Party voters who left the party for reform say they want Nigel as their leader, would he be able to unite the Tory party? I'm very pleased to say I'm about to be joined in the studio by the former power broker of the Tory party, Sir Graham Brady. He's live with us and he's next. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever OK to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, you know, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, you know, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, you know, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, you know, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News. Now, coming up, I'll give you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, I welcome former chair of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. Now, a bombshell new GB News poll has revealed that among those who voted Tory in 2019 but not in 2024, so essentially reform voters, Nigel Farage is, shock horror, by far the favourite candidate to be the next Conservative leader on 25%. Boris Johnson comes in second place with 12% of the vote, Suella Braverman achieving double the support of Kemi Badenoch. So, Sir Graham, I've got to ask you about these figures now. Does the Tory leadership race risk tearing the party apart even more than it already is, do you think?
I don't think so. I think, obviously, we are now in opposition. We're in opposition in a very small parliamentary party. And oddly, I came into Parliament first in 1997 in the shadow of a great big Labour landslide. My experience then, actually, was that the party started to pull together in Parliament. I think we realised there was a lot of work to do. There was a responsibility to provide a proper opposition and to hold government to account. There are very few people to do the work, even fewer now. And I think that we also started to spend a lot of time together and started to realise we had more in common than we had that divided us. So I hope the same thing will happen again now.
Indeed. It was quite unseemly, though. I think the first thing that really had to be done was the new election of the chair, your replacement. And that kicked off, didn't it? I had Mark Francois in the chair you're sitting in here now telling me that he didn't recognise Bob Blackman, that it was a kind of rigged election, it was a sham election.
Well, I mean, of course, that was a complete nonsense. Of course, the election was done quite quickly because I think it was important that we had people to speak up for the parliamentary party. I'm obviously not involved, and I agreed to go and count the votes because they wanted an impartial person to count the votes. So I was there when all of that happened. What caused it was that the whips, I think, in an effort to be helpful, have put a message out saying what the timing of the vote was. Now, I think the timing of the vote had changed between that, the first message, and the whips putting that message out, and then the 22 had changed it. And of course, the 22 is completely independent from the whips. So I don't think there's any malice in it, but the whips have put a different time out, and the 22, quite rightly, decides its own time.
Do you think that Conservative Party members should be allowed to choose who the next leader is?
I mean, I've always said I think when the party is in government, there is a problem with that, because you're choosing a Prime Minister, because the parliamentary party can obviously throw a Prime Minister out, because a vote of no confidence will do that. So I think there's a discord in that situation. In opposition, which we were in opposition, of course, when the current rules were written and the Constitution was put in place, I think it's entirely reasonable to allow the members to have a big debate and a big vote at the end of it, and to have a significant role in choosing the leader.
Is there not a concern, though, that in their infinite wisdom, the current Conservative MPs might actually select a couple of really quite dud candidates, because I would argue maybe Theresa May was kind of, she had a coronation, didn't she? That didn't go particularly well. Rishi Sunak, it's been a disaster. So should it not just be up to the people who want to stand? So let's say you end up with 5 choices and all of them go to the members.
Well, of course, you can make an argument for that, and it's not an unreasonable argument. It isn't what's in the Conservative Party's constitution. The constitution says that I'm no longer one of them, the Parliamentary Conservative Party has to provide 2 candidates to the members in the country to choose between, unless there is only one. Now, in a situation like any other election, if the second candidate drops out, as happened with Theresa May's election, Andrea Leadsom withdrew. Slightly different when Rishi Sunak was elected. Boris Johnson had the numbers to stand. We'd verified that, and he chose not to go forward to an election. If you only have one candidate in an election, that person wins. And it's the same in a general election as well. But the constitution of the party makes it very clear what we have to do, and I'm afraid the constitution of the party is very difficult to change and would take a long time to change.
Who should be the next leader of the Tories?
I know all of the candidates, obviously. I think a lot of them have got great strengths, and I have my own preferences. I think I'll keep my counsel on that for the time being, though.
No clues? I mean, come on, you know, there's the... Well, you're the kingmaker, aren't you?
Well, what I think is really important, I think it's perfectly proper when people say the party has to have a proper debate and think about what went wrong and think about how we can do better. We also need to remember that we have a constitutional duty and we have to provide a proper opposition, and it's going to be much needed because the government's majority is far too big to be healthy.
I'm glad you've raised that, because this is a concern that, let's say you wait until Conservative Party conference, which may well happen. I can see the logic behind that, maybe, but in the meantime we could end up with, I don't know, it depends how quickly they do all these things, but we could end up with, you know, a Labour budget, a completely radically different immigration policy. I mean, all sorts, you know, votes for kids, for goodness sake. We could end up with all of this, right? So, and you guys might not be ready for that. So what would your ideal time frame be?
Well, I'm not going to try to dictate a time frame. It's not my job to be involved in that now. What I do think is critically important is that my colleagues, my successors, Bob Blackman as chairman of the 1922 committee, the executive and the party board, are cognizant of that duty, which is not just to think about ourselves and think about the kind of debate that might benefit the Conservative Party. We do have an absolute constitutional duty as the parliamentary opposition, His Majesty's official opposition. It's the job that my colleagues in the House of Commons are required to do, and so we mustn't lose sight of that.
Yeah, OK, I don't think that'll be quite reassuring to a lot of people, really. But another aspect of things, I mean, you mentioned there being about the official opposition, but there is the potential that Keir Starmer might find that his official opposition is sitting behind him, actually, on a couple of things. One of them is this potential rebellion on the 2-child benefit cap, which could be just around the corner. So you've got the likes of John McDonnell and co there really whipping it up. I mean, he could now be forced by the people he's got behind him to increase the benefits, you know, with it massively increasing the welfare state. It could be a problem.
I thought it was astonishing a few days ago seeing Keir Starmer saying how welcome it was to have such a huge majority. I think any wise politician will recognise that too big a majority is bad for their own party, it's bad for the government, and it's certainly bad for the country. What you need to have is a parliament where some things can be in contention, where there is some question, and the more there is a challenge from the opposition side, the less the government benches themselves will feel entitled to provide that opposition. So I think you're absolutely right. The danger for the Labour Party with that enormous majority, of course, very small percentage of the country voted for them as well, which is a very unhealthy situation. I think creates a lot of potential instability for such a big majority. You would think it would be very solid, but I think it's a very thin, very vulnerable one. And they will be finding a big challenge from their own benches. And it's going to be a very important test that may well come quite soon as to whether they are in a position to deliver on the promises they made about fiscal discipline, whether they are really serious about that. And if they face that first rebellion down, And, you know, I think it's important they do, or they will lose that fiscal credibility. Then what's going to happen the next time? Will there be a bigger revolt? And we'll start to see just how tight a grip Keir Starmer and his colleagues really have with the Labour Party.
It is going to be a fascinating one, because that really, for a lot of people on the left and on the hard left, you know, the two-child benefit cap, they see that as an offence. You know, that's offensive. But actually, there are a huge amount of financial implications if you get rid of that.
Yes.
If he can stand that down, fair enough. But I think he might struggle. So, Graham, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Great to have you on the show. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right, and coming up, should we get a bank holiday if football comes home on Sunday? This is a shift in tone, isn't it? I'll tell you what Keir Starmer said. Plus, why has England lost all faith in this orangutan? Yes, I promise you that there is a slightly more serious undercurrent to all of this. I'll reveal all, but yes, before all of that, I've got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It looks like it'll be a pretty cloudy day for most of us on Friday. There's a risk of some very heavy showers across the southwest as well. Now, for most of us, high pressure is building in just for a time for the end of the week and into the start of the weekend. That means it will turn that much drier through the next few days, but there's still a risk of some showers. And through this evening, I think central areas are most likely to see the cloudiest skies and a risk of some rain through this evening. Also, some areas of rain might move into the far southeast from the near continent. Where skies remain clear, though, to the north, across parts of Scotland, it could be a bit of a fresh start down into the lower single figures by tomorrow morning. But for most of us, a fairly mild start. But as I said, sunshine is going to be a little bit limited through Friday. A northerly wind drags cloud in, perhaps some more heavy rain to the far northwest of Scotland throughout Friday morning. Some sunny spells, though, coming through for Northern Ireland, southwestern areas of Scotland. Also, some areas of northeastern England as well, but here we've got a northerly wind, and that's going to keep the temperatures down through the day. And as I said, there is a risk of showers across the south coast throughout the day, particularly as we head into the afternoon into the southwest. We could see some thundery, heavy downpours. But for most of us elsewhere, it should stay dry through Friday. Quite a lot of cloud around, though, so with that lack of sunshine, it's not going to be a particularly warm feeling day. And we could see some heavier rain move into the east coast of northern England later on in the day. So for most of us, temperatures in the high teens at best, possibly scraping 20 or 21 degrees in the far southeast. Saturday, there's little in the way of change. We've still got this rain lingering across eastern coasts of northern England and parts of Scotland, and once again we could see some fairly heavy showers breaking out across parts of Wales and southwestern England. But in any sunshine, it will feel quite warm over the weekend, particularly as we head towards Sunday, when I think it will be a bit of a drier day and we could see temperatures climbing into the low 20s.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations from the beautiful city of Belfast.
And right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Yes, this is Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News, and it's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. We go to the Metro. Come on, England, may you reign over Spain, but the King pleads, do try to win it by the 90th minute. So there we go. That's what's on the front of the Metro. The Telegraph, violent prisoners. Oh, sorry, let's go to the Mail. I got ahead of myself. The Daily Mail, Labour accused of scare tactics over full jail. So warnings of collapse in law and order within weeks, as 20,000 inmates are set for early release to free up cells. This is Labour letting crims back out on the streets early, isn't it? We'll talk about that. The Guardian, water bill rises show contempt for customers. Yeah, fine, all right. Union warns Prime Minister over public sector pay deals. Interesting this. Keir Starmer is on a collision course with unions after playing down the chance of real terms pay increases for public sector staff in forthcoming negotiations. That is going to be one to watch, that, everybody. What shall I go to now? What shall I go to? The Times. In Gareth we trust. FA wants Southgate to stay for the World Cup. Of course they do. They kept him in anyway. Gareth Southgate has got a job for life there. But anyway, prisoners to be freed after 40% of sentence. And it is on that topic that I reintroduce my press pack. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Alison, crims everywhere under Labour.
Well, far be it from me to be rude about the previous Conservative administration, but what a bloody mess they've left to clear up.
Absolutely.
I mean, the prisons are full. I do agree with this Timpson guy they're getting in. I think that's very good, and he's saying a lot of women are in prison, including some, as I've said before, who've been put into prison for not paying the BBC licence fee. They're full, Patrick. Look, the water, you know, sewage in the sea, everywhere you look, the utilities are in a terrible state. So, yeah, but they've got to do something. I think it's terrible. There are lots of men out on probation who have been violent criminals or sex criminals who are then repeat offenders when they're out on probation. But we need to build more prisons. There was a very good cartoon, actually, today, which I really liked, which showed some male prisoners and somebody desperately trying to say to them, could you identify as women to go into a woman's prison?
Gosh.
It'll probably come to that.
Well, there we go. Sean, you know, maybe there is actually quite a lot of truth to what we're going to hear Keir Starmer say about everything now, which is, I've just had a look at this, and it's an absolute mess.
Firstly, that's absolutely a lie, because none of this was a secret. Everything that's happened, and people say, oh, my gosh, the public finances are in a mess. It's not the first time they see them, so that's nonsense. But to focus on the prison thing, there's two ends to this debate. We should be looking at shorter sentences for the right people, but it has to be planned and done properly. You can't just open the doors and let them out, because the other end of that is it is poor communities that will then be filled with criminals, and one of the greatest drivers of crime is the idea that you get away with it. So if you are young, you come from a poor community and the criminals come back, you'll think, well, there's no risk here. So it's a very nuanced debate, and it has to be handled properly.
That's a really good point, actually, because, I mean, earlier on in the show, I played some footage of some shoplifting and a bit of machete action as well. And that seems to be happening all the time by people who clearly don't feel the consequences of this. And I can't help but wonder whether or not, if word goes around prisons, which I imagine it is now, that you could be out to serving 40% of your sentence, then that reduces the deterrent even more, Matthew.
Look, I think there are two issues here. One is the fact that the prisons are literally full. There's an issue just before the election campaign when the government was having to release people early because there are literally no prison places. And, you know, I may say Keir Starmer can walk on water, but he can't build a prison in a week.
Well, OK,
yeah,
fine.
But so that's the issue now. I think, secondly, and actually it ties into it, James Timpson, who's basically a non-party figure, you know, his family have traditionally been Tories, who's been put in charge of the prison system. We need real reform. So, as Alison says, those serious offenders are in prison for longer, but we don't have the revolving door on people on low sentences.
You know, actually, what's going to happen? We are one serious offence from one of these people. If and I
absolutely, I mean, it's grim.
This doesn't happen. I hope to God this doesn't happen. But someone gets let out in the next couple of weeks, 40%, goes out, commits a rape or murders a child or something.
That already happens, and we mustn't use that as a reason to do or not to do this. It has to be managed carefully. There's another additional thing they can do as well. They should change the rules around tagging. So if you are going to let people out early, give them a tag so you know where they are, because that helps them reduce their offending. It's important.
All right, let's whiz it on to another topic now. So, should Keir Starmer grant the nation a bank holiday if England win the Euros final on Sunday? Well, the PM didn't rule it out.
If England win, do we all get an extra day off?
Well, we should certainly mark the occasion. I don't want to jinx it. I went to the last Euros finals. I don't want to go through that again. So don't want to jinx anything. We must mark it in some way.
So Sir Keir Starmer previously backed the idea of bank holidays for England winning major tournaments. Obviously, the concern is that it could actually cost the taxpayer, you know, a heck of a lot of money. What do you make of that? Should we get a bank holiday if the Three Lions roar, Alison?
No, we should not. I mean, basically about 6 million people in the country. Every day is a bank holiday, isn't it, really? we've got a productivity.
Watch out for my GB.
Prices, Patrick. No, I think a nice open-top bus ride. I really hope they win. I'm very excited. Let's all hope that they win. But no, we can't go giving. We've already got an awful lot of bank holidays, haven't we?
The thing is, well, look, we can see what's going to happen. But if England do win, there's going to be a lot of. Sorry, I can't make it in on the Monday. Oh, I've got this cough, you know. I can't, you know.
And that's just from you.
Exactly.
We absolutely should have a bank holiday if England win.
For what?
There's two reasons. Firstly, I'm with the King. They have to win in the 90 minutes because the penalties was horrific. I can't go through that again. But more importantly, there's no doubt the country is in the doldrums. And if something can lift us all up, if something could give us an extra 10 minutes with our family, it might be important for our well-being, because in the next 4 years, we're going to have to get to work to get this country back. Give us a day off.
One thing I will say, though, with Matthew, is what a pass Keir Starmer's been served up so far. The Tories are eating themselves alive. You've got the chairman of the 1922 committee, who's been elected in what people are calling a rigged election.
Will they close the polls early?
England might win the Euros. The economy, which has got nothing to do with him so far, has just been boosted even more than whatever. We are set to see net migration figures just come down naturally. I mean, goodness gracious me.
I'm only gutted because in '97, when Blair won, the timing was such that we won the Eurovision Song Contest about 3 weeks later. Look, I'm with Alison on this. The Lib Dems have jumped on this bandwagon, saying we should have a bank holiday. The truth of the matter is, it's the summer, so you know, lots of kids will be off school pretty much anyway. Certainly, they're already off school in Scotland. There's an issue about, do we have to give Scotland and Wales an extra day somewhere later in the year to balance out the numbers, etc. I think, look, the productivity is very important. So without being Mr. Gradgrind, I think no to a bank holiday. Yes to a big celebration, no to a bank holiday.
Hey, look, a bank holiday will up our productivity, a good rest, and then we get straight back to work.
You sound like the kind of guy who's starting to become in favour of a 4-day week.
I hate that idea.
Oh, he's in the laws. They do a 4-day week.
When was the last time we won anything? 1966.
Under a Labour government.
Give the people a break. Come on, bank holiday.
Labour government.
Come on, bank holiday.
I'm sure that's what they were thinking as they were taking on the Germans there in the final.
Absolutely, come for Harold. For Harold Wilson.
Yeah, do it for that. Right. Anyway, England's dramatic late victory in last night's semi-final sent supporters into a bit of a spin. And the US rock group, The Killers, were keen to make sure that fans at their gig didn't miss out.
In a European Championship final, that's exactly right.
Meanwhile, over at Dortmund Zoo, Walter the orangutan has boldly predicted the winner of the Euro final. Who have you gone for, Walter? OK, well, we see Walter ambling over. He's got to choose between Spain and England, and he's gone for Spain. All right? Well, apparently Walter sided with the Netherlands in the last match, and look how that turned out. So have that, Walter, all right? I know who you think you are, mate, right? But you're rubbish. You're useless. You've got no idea what you're doing. You're a complete fraud. We approached Walter to offer a right of reply, and he told us...
Memorial hair
I don't believe a word about Walter.
Isn't he Walter? Isn't it like, if he's German, he's in Dortmund Zoo?
Can't you tell? He's got the German twang, mate.
Well, as a German, I'm not surprised he voted against us.
What I can just say is I'm very sad that we didn't cut back to your little bopping along to the Killers there.
The Killers, yes, indeed. Right, coming up, who's Keir Starmer talking about here? Any second now, who's he talking?
They're implying that President Biden is senile. Is he?
No, we had a really good bilateral yesterday.
OK. I'll reveal all of that and more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages when I'm back in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End, it's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something. You know, he's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress us, who enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys. Now, I've got some more front pages for you. Let's do it. We're going to go in with The Independent. End the injustice of indefinite prison terms now. Oh, come on. As Labour moves to reduce the time criminals spend in jail, David Blunkett joins 70 criminal justice experts backing The Independent's call for a category of prisoners trapped inside. All right, fine. Daily Express, ban them now. We bought a deadly crossbow in just 2 minutes. Just hours after the nation was shot by a crossbow attack that left 3 people dead, the Express was able to buy a similar weapon with no questions asked. Yeah, OK, I will. I'm not coming into bat for crossbows here, by the way, if anyone says that. But sometimes, just sometimes, it is, you know, the lunatic who has the crossbow, as opposed to maybe the fact that they can get one themselves. There are other ways to kill people. But anyway, the Eye. Starmer faces mutiny on child benefit from Labour backbenchers. Good story this, yes. I'm keen for us to just touch on this a little bit, because I spoke about it with Graham Brady. Matthew, I'll put it to you. Keir Starmer's going to realise, isn't he, that his stonky majority actually could be a bit of a problem, because he's got a load of people behind him there who I bet are bang in favour of scrapping this cap, and actually he can't do it, because otherwise we'd get bankrupt, wouldn't we?
So, I mean, the two-child benefit cap is unfair. In principle, Labour's against it, but as you say, there ain't no money to pay for lifting it. So there'll be discussions with the new MPs. I remember in '97 it was actually a child benefit issue. It was the first rebellion as well. Frankfield, the rebellion was involved in it with Harriet Harman. So you need to handle this very carefully.
This is a problem for him. I think this is, Alison, this could be a problem for him. He's going to find out exactly who's sitting behind him.
Yeah, but it's a very tough one, isn't it, Patrick? Because we have got a birth crisis. You know, we've got a population crisis. Yeah. We do need to encourage people to have children. So if they're going to introduce this, I liked the child benefits, this controversial view, when it was a universal benefit, because a lot of women, they think, why give it to richer people? But because it was something everybody had. All mums.
And straight to the mum.
All mums. Yeah. It went straight to the mum. You had your sort of child allowance. I mean, it was the family allowance when I was a little kid, and it meant a lot to my mum. I liked it being a universal benefit.
Interesting.
It encouraged you to feel that you were part of something special. The state valued you as a mum.
Because there is
totally.
Yeah, there's that, there's all of that, and there is the side of it as well that no doubt quite a few people in Keir Starmer's backbenches will be making the point, which is, you know, how dare you stop paying people who need the benefits the most, if they've got young kids, young single mums, or whatever they might say. You know, he's going to have to try and face that down, sure.
His real problem is going to be we've grown the population so rapidly, many people are economically inactive, and now he wants to add bills, child benefit being one of them. I don't think he can afford it. We have a crisis around housing. In London alone, we spend £90 million a month on temporary accommodation, on that one measure. Why I say that is because if you just add those two things together, the government cannot afford these things. So, again, Labour are going to be forced with a lot of practical decisions to make.
And a big row with Scottish Labour because Scottish Labour is officially against the two-child benefit cap. So there's going to be tension with all those new Scottish MPs, 30-odd.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, now, Sir Keir Starmer met Joe Biden for the first time in Washington yesterday ahead of a NATO summit, and he surprised a few people with this claim about the US president.
They're implying that President Biden is senile. Is he?
No, we had a really good bilateral yesterday. We were billed for 45 minutes. We went on for the best part of an hour. We went through a huge number of issues at pace. He was actually on really good form and
mentally agile,
absolutely across all the detail.
Guys, I have just received something here, seriously, and this is, you couldn't time this. We're going to try and get this clipped up for you and make it on air, but we've only got a couple of minutes. It appears that President Biden has just introduced President Zelensky as President Putin on stage at NATO. I'm going to play you a little clip next to my microphone here now. So.
And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Oh, you hate to see it. Yeah. You hate to see it.
Yeah. I've got to say this, right? Forget that he's the president of America and leads the free world. It's just on a personal level. Yeah. He will live longer. His health will be better if someone alleviates him from this pressure.
Absolutely. Well, it's got to be Jill, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's got to be the First Lady. It's got to tell him.
But his party should have some sympathy for him.
Well, they're starting to, but it's I think the person he trusts most, obviously, they're a real team, and I think the First Lady's got the future of the free world in her hands.
Yeah, she's got to.
And hopefully, hopefully this is another nail in the coffin of him restanding, because he needs to, as you say, go and have a nice retirement without the burden of office.
I think she enjoys being First Lady a bit too much.
She'll be First Lady forever. The American people are generous. They'll always remember her as First Lady and treat her as such. He cannot keep going for his own personal health. And, of course, the whole of us. There's a number of people in the world who will take great offence to what he's just
massive.
done.
Yeah,
absolutely massive.
I mean, poor Keir, when asked, is he senile, he can hardly say, yes, he's a bit doddery, can he? I mean, he has to say he was great, so...
I mean, that would be the headline, wouldn't it? Yeah, actually. He didn't know what day of the week it was,
and he thought I was Rishi Sunak. Or Liz Truss, or Boris Johnson, take your pick.
Yeah, unfortunately for President Biden, he may well not know that he's just met Sir Keir Starmer. But, yeah, if you are just joining us, then, yeah, apparently, well, he has. He's introduced Zelensky as President Putin. So, yeah. All right, time to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. Alison, who's your greatest Briton, please?
It's going to be Suella Braverman, the only person telling the truth about how rubbish her Conservative government was and how she did try to warn them. She's getting criticised, but I think a lot of voters will really welcome her honesty.
OK, good start. Go on, Sean.
Mine is Ollie Watkins for that goal. He saved all 70 million of us from pure heartache. He raised...
I think you just include the Scots, the Welsh and the Northern Irish there, Sean.
They wanted to see us win too. I have to believe that. But look, come on, when he scored, it was unbelievable. If that was a Hollywood script, you'd have said, come on, don't be so silly. He saved us. And you know what? He may have got us a bank holiday.
He may have got you a bank holiday, absolutely. I'll just take this opportunity to emphasise that I was trapped in here last night and couldn't watch that. But, other people were able to go and watch the game. Anyway, Matthew, who's your greatest Britain?
So mine is the new Work and Pension Secretary, Liz Kendall, and a slightly more serious, who has today set out her plan to get Britain working again, which is what we've all been talking about, to get more people to working age, absolutely vital. Liz has hit the ground running.
All right. And
she's going to be a great minister.
I'm going to go for Ollie Watkins, absolutely. And when I get off, I'll just ask my executive producer what it was like to see that live. So, right, OK, so go on, Alison, who's your Union jackass, please?
It's Mad Ed Miliband. Cover our countryside with pylons to no great effect, and he's going to return us to the Flintstones.
All right, bold. OK, well, it's a good start again. Go on.
Mine is that ITV sitcom named Piglets. The police Don't laugh. It's a serious thing because, look, denigrating the police is not good for anyone. It makes us all unsafe. They could have named it something else. The police are up in arms. They feel really bad. And one of the things we really have to do in this country is raise the morale of the police because it's better for us all.
All right, Matthew, quickly.
And sorry, Alison, mine's Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch for fighting like rats in a sack when the Tories need to to be quiet, have a little period of silence and internally reflect before this public fight.
Yeah, fine. Right, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Ed Miliband.
I'll win one day.
No, come on. I think, seriously, this guy, we've got to watch this guy. He does not appear, as far as I can tell, to have any regard for other people's...
Who's going to be Barney Rubble to his Fred Flintstone? That's what I want to know.
Well, there we go. Ed Miliband, of course, would deny all of that and presumably...
He's a great man.
He's a very competent, great man with a bright future ahead of him. All right, anyway, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening at home. I will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. to round off your week, but in the meantime, enjoy Headliners.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It looks like it'll be a pretty cloudy day for most of us on Friday. There's a risk of some very heavy showers across the southwest as